everybody. It's DigCit Week 2022, and we are celebrating 10 years of Digital Citizenship Week from Common Sense Education. And we have teamed up with Common Sense Ed and a lot of our Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coaches to present some really great topics about digital citizenship. And this session is not one to be missed. Today we have Shannon Quigley, who is a digital learning coach for Keep Indiana Learning, and she's sharing some student-centered resources for you to use during DigCit Week and all year round, because it is always more than a week, but this week we focus on it. And we'd love to have you share some of your DigCit Week, DigCit wins with us through hashtags listed below. And if you're on Twitter, tag Common Sense Ed and Keep In Learning for a chance to be retweeted, shared across our networks with the work that you are doing with students to celebrate Digital Citizenship Week 2022. Shannon, thanks so much for being with us here today. I'm excited to listen to your presentation on student-centered resources. So I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I was excited. 10 years seems like hard to believe that it's 10 years of Digital Citizenship Week. But like Lena said, it is not going to be in this session here just about what you can do this week. It's going to be a lot of things that hopefully you'll find you can keep using and reusing with your students throughout the year, because over the last 10 years, if you think about what has changed with instruction and the way students are learning and working in their classrooms, it's a totally different environment than what things looked like 10 years ago. So on this first slide, I just wanted to stop for a second and really think about how do we approach teaching digital citizenship in our classrooms. And you can kind of think about this week, if you haven't spent a lot of time on digital citizenship in your class this year, as maybe the launch. But I have the moon up there because we really want to keep orbiting around this idea of digital citizenship is not an isolated thing to teach just this week and then forget about. Our students are really digital natives, which is something maybe we're in our life, we're not always that way. So we've learned to grow with the technology, but the students we have today are really immersed in it from the time they're toddlers. They're wandering around with parents' cell phones, and they have access to things that maybe we didn't have access to until different times. So today we're going to think about how can we weave digital citizenship throughout our learning to kind of keep this an ever-present part of your classroom environment. So I was kind of inspired by when I was thinking about how to approach digital citizenship this year, this article from ISTE, and it's really not a long article, but it really talked about kind of shifting that thinking around digital citizenship and how we can promote is not like what you have to do to be safe online, which all those things are important, but rather framing it as like, what is our responsibility in being digital citizens rather than a list of do's and do nots? How can we start positively framing what it looks like to be a digital citizen in today's world? So it has 4 kind of bullets there that I focused my presentation or ideas around today about using the technology to make your community better, engaging respectfully online, how you can take those things that you're doing and be amplifying them to public leaders and shaping public policy and change, which is seems like a lofty goal for some of us, but really we're starting that with our students now. And then really giving them the opportunity to determine that validity of information that they find online. So I sourced that out. So if you want to take a look at more of the video or check out more resources, you can. But just kind of know those are kind of the premises of what's going to drive the ideas I'm going to share with you today. So the main takeaway that I want you, if nothing else from this presentation, is that we know that our students engage with content better when things are authentic, relevant, and real for them. And so the more you can do in your classroom that, again, orbits that idea of digital citizenship, the better buy-in and the more growth you'll see in your students to be digital citizens. So keeping in mind, we're not just citizens, like digital citizenship and citizenship are kind of one and the same at this point, because digital resources and access to technology permeates every part of their life at this point. Okay. So let's consider some ways that we can make those 4 ideas part of your natural classroom learning environment. So I kind of focused on 2 things. One, in our district, we do a lot of EDGE protocols. So I want to make sure I call them out here because what they do are repeatable lesson frames that you can use over and over again with your students. And I'm going to show you a couple today that you can use with these ideas to repeat over and over in your classrooms, but then also this idea of collaboration. So a lot of things, digital citizenship is not isolated to online. You want to give your students a chance to practice everything they may do online with peers in a controlled environment with you guiding that thinking. So number one, I've got the first one is engaging, and I kind of did them out of order just in ways that made sense to me. Engaging respectfully online with people who have different beliefs than you. And I think this is the first thing to think about when you think of those four, because in your classroom, when you're building a community, you already have a natural group of people that you're interacting with. So the first takeaway or idea to keep that digital citizenship going throughout the year is understanding that everyone is not thinking like you, and and then as the teacher, you're going to find as many ways to source ideas as you can. So how many different ways can I get kids to see that people might have a different idea than me, and teach them how to respond when that happens? So the first time they see somebody who's not agreeing with them should not be online. They should have practiced it so many times in a controlled environment, such as your classroom, that it's just natural for them when they go to respond. They have all those things in their brain about what it means to be a digital citizen because they've practiced it so many times. And then the second I'm going to show you is a 3 times writing called You, Me, and the Teacher, but I think I switched the name on the other slide, so hold tight on that. But again, the first thing when you start talking about this portion of being a digital citizen, it starts with how you have conversations in your classroom. So starting with that accountable talk and giving kids a chance to, every time you're sharing one of these ways that you're sourcing that information, giving them those sentence stems to choose from. So whether this is I always had this as a giant anchor chart in my classroom. Kids had it on their, taped to their folders. So if they needed to get it out when they were in a collaborative group, they could have it out and ready. But always teaching them, when we're learning how to talk to each other, let's use one of these stems. I agree with you because, or I like what you said about, because one, it stops and gives them a chance to process the way they want to respond, because sometimes things can get kind of personal and you don't want them you want them to learn to process in a frame of thinking. And that's what this accountable talk anchor chart can do. And you can customize this with your student. The more you can get them to help you create these thinking stems, the better, because it makes them have ownership in what you're doing. Okay, so let's talk about how you can then use some of those question stems. The first way to get kids talking that way is by using a daily check-in. So this is one that I like to use because we have these monitors in our school, or even if you don't, you can share this website with students when they come in. But when they come in every day, just give them a chance to respond to something. Every student engages every day, which again makes them feel welcome to respond, and then gives you the opportunity to model that not everyone's thinking the same way in our class. And by doing these things with low stakes topics, again, it makes it feel accessible to everyone. So every day when kids come in, maybe it's what's your favorite color? And give them 4 choices. If you had to pick one of these things to eat for lunch today, which would you choose? What's your favorite animal out of these 4? So giving them some low stakes chances to respond, and then going back to your thinking stems and saying, okay, would somebody like to share their choice? And then who agrees, who disagrees? Giving them those chances to have that accountable talk. So now you've practiced it out loud with your class. They can start to think about, what does that mean when now I have a digital way to respond? So a couple other tools that I like to get those responses from are Answer Garden. And I like Answer Garden. If you haven't used it before, again, you just go on and create a single question, and then kids can come in and give their answer. I've used this for, let's tell a character trait. Sometimes I even have them put in the answer to a math problem. And the more kids that respond, it's like a word cloud, the louder it gets, or the bigger it gets on your screen. Why do you think this is the biggest answer in our room? And give them chances. Do you agree with what the largest word is, or the largest answer? And again, always going back to your accountable talk. And that can transition into, now when you're ready to start teaching them what it means to do those responses online, you can use tools like Canva whiteboards. You can use tools like Zoom has a whiteboard. I know that tons of other tools like whiteboard.fi. There's just tons of ways that you can get kids to be talking in that stream where they have to then type out or be a more digital response to that answer. So now you can start to gradually release them into their own world. Okay, today during stations, I want you to leave a response, and we're going to check and see what those responses look like. So kind of thinking through some ways that these are natural parts of our day that we can keep referring to. Okay, so multiple responses. And here's the one that I wanted to share with you as a writing routine for you. So this is, again, an adaptation of a EduProtocol, and the one that they have is 3-genre writing. And what it does is it gives kids a writing prompt, and then in the 3-genre writing, they have to write about the prompt from the narrative, from a historical fiction, and any other type of genre of writing you want them to do. In this adaptation of that protocol, you're going to give kids a prompt, and you give them just short amount of time to write their response. Write a paragraph on the way you feel about this topic. That's my me. At the end of 3 minutes, they have to switch their thinking quickly. What do you think someone who disagreed with you might say? So they have to think about that from a different perspective. So now they're writing about that. And then the last box is, do I agree? Because remember that digital citizenship is like, sometimes you're not going to agree with them. And sometimes you are. So you have to you're going to give it somebody in the class. In the beginning, I said teacher, but then I was thinking, it might be powerful to sometimes give one student be the person. So, and then at the end, in the third box, you say, okay, now let's see what so-and-so says. And you're going to have to read their response and decide if you agree or disagree with them, and use one of our thinking stems to write a response that you would say to them if you saw this posted online. So me, you, and do we agree? Yes or no, and then write your response. And this is a quick routine that you could do several times because it is a short timed presentation or short timed activity that you can then turn around and talk about as a class. So here's a quick example. The statement says dogs are better than cats. If I agree, I'm going to write, I agree because, and I give my reasons for why dogs are better than cats. Well, what if somebody said cats were better? What would they write? And now we can reveal the mystery person. They write their choice there, and then you have to write if you agree or disagree with them using that respectful tone. So just kind of that as a frame you could pull out once a week. You could put it in a station, but training them how to respond in different ways using that thinking routine. Okay. The second takeaway from that is the article was an important thing was determining the validity of online sources of information. And this is a really hard one because access to the internet is so widestream now that right away kids are, even at the most kindergarten, first, second grade level, they know how to go to Google and use the little microphone and type in, goldfish, and they can find articles and sources right at the touch of their fingers. But they haven't really been trained into know, is this a true source? Is this a good source? Or is it a bad source of fake information? Because our filtering systems, no matter how good for our school districts are, they're not going to find things that are necessarily false if they don't have red flag things going through them. So here's a quick video I found on YouTube is about harvesting spaghetti that you could share with your students that just kind of teach, like it shows them picking the spaghetti and finding it and how it's grown. So that is not necessarily a true video, but it sparks the conversation. So pulling out little things like that to start the conversation around things you find online aren't always true. And here's some good resources. So you can go online and you can find pictures of things that are photoshopped or put together. Like I see this elephant. What do you guys think? Is this a real picture or is this a fake picture? And how would you know? And so give them some chances to talk about as a group how they would know if things are real or fake. National Geographic Kids actually has a book series that I really love because these are great brain breaks, things you can pull up and start like a page a day. We're going to talk about if this is real or fake and find out some facts of information. There's one on this page that's real. So the blue lobster is a real animal. So it's a good conversation that, some things you just don't know about and you have to change your thinking, because I'm thinking a lot of kids might think that blue lobster is also a fake image. So the real or fake book is a great one for you to say, how can I check if something is true? This book helps you out on that. But when you share, one of the most basic things I think I was thinking when I was taking this away is that when you share something with your students, be explicit about where it's from and why you chose it. I know I'm guilty of not doing that enough, of just giving students a link and saying, this is going to be your source today, but not explaining why I chose that source or how I know that. And then just assuming that kids are going to make good choices themselves. So kind of doing that gradual release of responsibility model is that for a while, especially at the beginning of the year, I'm going to start being the person who chooses sites for students to go to and explaining to them why they're getting their research from this site or why I chose it. But then maybe as the year goes on, our students progress through higher grade levels, we're going to work together to find 4 sources that should support our thinking around this topic and guiding them to making good choices. And then finally, when they've shown me through our lessons that, hey, you know how to evaluate a good source, now you can start to do it together or start to do it on your own. So that gradual release of responsibility of finding sources for content is a great thing to consider as you're thinking about how to create good digital citizens. Okay. The last is probably the biggest activity to kind of show you how to do that. And again, this is an Edu protocol called Thin Chef. And what it does is it gives kids a chance to synthesize sources that you give them. So in Thin Chef, you give kids one source to read, and they have to create 2 images and 2 words that synthesize or summarize that source and put it on a slide. And each student gets 1 slide each in their group. So if you have a group of 4 students, everyone is looking at the same source, but they are all responsible for creating their own slide in relation to that source topic. So in this example, I want students to research frogs. I've chosen this National Geographic Kids article about frogs because I'm still at the top of my gradual release triangle here. But their responsibility is to each person in the group is going to have a different topic on their slide. So one person's looking at the habitat. One person's looking at food sources. One person's looking at different varieties of frogs. And they're creating their slide to go around that. And then as a group, they're going to make a summarizing statement about their source that they found. So this gives you kind of an opportunity to get kids focused on one single source, not going out to Google and finding a million different frog facts that may or may not connect, but it keeps them focused and working as a team together around that source. So really accomplishing several goals for you. 1, giving them reliable sources. 2, giving them a chance to collaborate around that source. And 3, synthesizing the information from a valuable site in relation to a direct question. So you're hitting standards, you're hitting digital citizenship goals, all in this activity, and it can be repeated several times. All you have to do is change out the topic, change out the links, and then again, maybe later you drop the one source and you add 2 sources to compare, or you allow students to choose the source and you do the activity the same way. So a lot of variability about how you could utilize that activity with your students. The last 2, using technology to make your community better, is really just bringing awareness to the students that they're a part of their community, and technology is a big part of that community as well. So something I like to start out with students is creating a poster about their digital life to recognize that they are citizens in this digital world. So they create this poster about themselves, about how they use technology in different aspects of their life. You can display these, you could put them in a shared file for each other to look at, but it really just draws their attention that they have a responsibility in this community. And then always bringing that back to a shared responsibility for your class. So anytime your class needs to talk about digital citizenship or how you do or make something in your class, make that shared anchor chart together. Posters, how to create and share things. Need an anchor chart for anything? Make someone be the digital creator and share that with your class. So I'm really making them owners in the technology components of your classroom, focusing on those create, critical thinking of the 4 C's. And again, making it relevant. If you have problems and solutions like what should we do with cell phones in our school, or what if your computers aren't coming charged, or people aren't being responsible to each other online, how can we solve those together as a class? Make any issue that you're having, bring it to the class, because we've already talked about accountable talk and how to create a shared sense of responsibility for these issues in your class together. So you should have kind of that classroom community created to help when you get to this level of digital citizenship in your classroom. And then finally, which I think is probably the most challenging to think about if you're an elementary teacher, but going up into our older students, using technology to make your voice heard by public leaders and shape public policy is really about applying that learning. So one of the most powerful tools we have, I think, to our teacher resources is Canva. So when students get new learning around digital citizenship, allow them to make infographics, allow them to make posters, allow them to campaign or petition to whoever they need to by creating high quality digital resources that they can then implement themselves. Okay. I know that's a fast and furious 20 minutes of resources, but hopefully you had an idea or 2 you could take back and use. And if you're interested in the slides, here is a bit.ly that you can use to grab them. And then if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect and share any of that content with you.
Shannon, thank you so much. That was a power-packed 20 minutes. I am also just going to do a shout out for Canva, that is such a wildly fantastic resource, free forever for educators and students. And if you search the templates for digital citizenship on Canva, they have so many good ones to go and explore. I can't not say enough about Canva. Thank you, Shannon, so much for being here on Year 10 celebration of Digital Citizenship Week. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to learning more.
Yes, stick around. Our next session, for those of you watching live, or grab it in the playlist if you're watching us after the fact, is with Common Sense Education, and they're taking us through a couple of their digital dilemmas that help your students role play through those tough cyber circumstances, and some good ways to help them be prepared for when they encounter those types of circumstances in their own life. So thanks again for being here on DigCit Week, and we will see you in the next one.
Thank you.